has been withdrawn by the applicant, so if any of you are here for that zoning, you're welcome to stay, but understand if you'd like to leave at this time. I now call on the County Clerk, Susan Mabry, to call the roll.
Chairman Michelle Morgan.
Here.
Vice Chairman George Chambers. Commissioner Montreal McClendon.
Here.
Commissioner Clint Chance.
Here.
Commissioner Tommy Lee. Commissioner Steve Fuller.
Here.
Commissioner Ernie Reynolds.
Here.
Thank you.
I'd like to call on Christy Garrett to offer our invocation tonight.
Good evening. If you'd bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be here tonight. Lord, as we come into this time of year, we've moved through Thanksgiving, we move into the Christmas season. Lord, help us to remember that there are those less fortunate, that there are those that need us to love them, that need us to not judge them. Lord, just help this committee, this group, county commissioners do their job lovingly to keep you at the forefront of all their decision making. Lord, there again, help us to keep Jesus Christ at the center and at the focus. Because of his birth, we have been saved. Help us to share that with others and glorify your name in everything we do. In Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to call on the University of West Georgia Bluecoats to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Commissioners, we're going to do a quick photo op for the students. They just stay seated and they'll come behind us, and Christy's going to take our picture. Thank you, Bo. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Great, I have a second. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, thank you. You each have a copy of the October 31st, 2019 work session and the November 5th, 2019 commission meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion made.
And a second?
So moved.
Okay, great. All those in favor? Opposed?
Approved 6-0.
Okay, great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is public comments. Public comments are just that, an opportunity for the public to address the commission with any issues or concerns they may have. This is not for the board to comment, nor will the board take any action on the comments. There was a sign-up sheet in back. We will take those comments first, and anyone else willing to do so may make a comment.
No one signed up.
Oh, no one signed up. Is there anyone here tonight in the audience that would like to take a moment for a public comment? Okay, we'll move on to our financial session. I'm going to call on our Finance Director, Alicia Searcy, to present the October financial recap.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
October, again, has come in above our budgeted numbers, so we're continuing to see increases across the board. Our revenue to date is $17,310,785. That's 32.46% of our budget, which is running ahead of last year by about $3.3 million. Our expenses to date are $17,591,217, which is 32.98% of our budget. And at this point through the year, we should be at about 33% of our budget. So our expenditures are running a little higher than last year, but we knew that to be the case with the raises that we gave and some other increases in the budgeted amount. Our fund balance last year was $10,567,000. This year, for the same date in October, is $13,909,000. So that gives us an increase in our fund balance year over year of $3,342,000. And our general fund cash is at $13,804,000. Last year it was at $9,111,000. That gives us an increase in cash of $4,693,000 over last year. We have about 94 days in operating cash, so we're sitting about where we should as far as our cash is concerned. Good increases in our fund balance. And revenue remains strong. Property taxes in October were a little ahead of where we were last year, even though from what I understand, November is going to be a little slower. But sales tax continues to be about 8% ahead of last year. Our TVAT tax is still coming in ahead of last year. So all in all, I feel like we're doing very well financially.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Alicia?
I have a couple, and Alicia, I apologize. I probably should have asked these because these are minor things, but I went through the detail on the general fund side, and I guess you would do SPLOST in a little bit, but I just had 2-3 quick questions on, as you say, overall 33% looks good all the way through each department, so on. The risk management line under expenditures, I just wondered, it looks like we spent a little over 50% there versus about a third, and so I just wondered if
we pay our premiums annually for our insurance, and all of those were paid in the, I believe in August.
Okay.
So we have expended a majority of our risk management money. There will still be some small bond payments for some bonds that we have to maintain, and a couple of other things that will go into that area, but outside of that, we've paid a majority of those expenses.
Okay, I'll make this quick. Under the health department and the welfare, I noticed like zero expenditures, although there were some small amounts budgeted, and I didn't know.
We make annual payments there too,
Gotcha.
and we haven't made that annual payment yet.
Okay, okay. And then a capital lease, it seems like both the capital lease and capital lease interest seem fairly high with a year-to-date figure of around 50% and 90%, so I didn't know what that was.
There's 2 payments annually on that. We've made the first payment, and so the second payment will come in about 5 more months. Okay. And that'll zero that out. Okay. That's all I've got for general fund, unless I should ask any SPLOST fund questions now. But well, I wasn't in particular going to detail anything on the SPLOST. If you have some specific questions, I'll be glad to.
I just have one. I guess it's pretty much it's a question, but it might be considered a comment as well. But I really appreciate. I mean, I know it takes a lot to get these figures together. The overall situation I find myself in is that I like to see the big picture, that I like to see the forest, and it seems like with these details, which are good, after you see the forest, I'd certainly as an auditor like to dig down into the details, but we have, expenditures by vendor name and expenditures in all kinds of detail, like so much was paid to a covert company and so much to Flint Trading, and but honestly that is meaningless information to me unless I see the big picture. And I wondered if we could maybe work out some systematic, maybe monthly report, if you want to call it that, or augmentation on the SPLOST side that would give us what you gave me about a month ago, which was very interesting, and that's what I need like each month, which would be basically 4 or 5 figures, and that is the total SPLOST fund balance, and of that, the total obligated balance, and then the remaining unobligated balance, and then the average monthly collection of SPLOST. And then possibly if we could take that total obligated balance and say, of that, how much is there reserved for some of the capital expenditures like judicial center or any admin or admin building and that kind of thing. Just that on a monthly basis of that forest picture would do me a lot of good. And that way I could relate to the detail. But with only getting the detail, I don't have anything now to make the detail make sense.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Well, we're working on putting some other reports together, and your input will definitely help.
Okay.
And if you want to come into my office at some point, let's sit down and talk specifically about what you want, so we can kind of match that up with what some of the other commissioners are asking for, so that
Yeah.
I can try to make sure that everyone gets what they need and to help them make the decisions that they're going to make.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Commissioner Reynolds, along that same line, I know had been speaking with Ms. Cersei in past couple of months, and I know that I'm working on something that she's aware of that we're trying to work in tandem with SPLOST on that reporting, more of a mapping system to help to look that may coincide with, I think, maybe what you're talking about. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's about 3 or 4 levels up from what we're getting now, so that's great.
Okay.
Good.
Ms. Cersei, I've got a couple of questions on the general budget as well under revenues. Contributions have already exceeded $24,000 from what we've budgeted, which is a positive, but I'm just wondering if you could explain what that is.
We've received some contributions for the animal shelter, and we've also received some contributions for the mental health advocates of about $26,000 that we weren't anticipating for this year.
Okay. And our, under expenditures, our county attorney line, it looks like we're about 400% below prior year to date.
We'll catch that up in November. We've got a couple of months that got all into the system at one time, so after November, that should level out.
Okay, and probate court, it looks like we're trending about $37,000 above prior year to date, but our budgeted annual amount was actually less than prior year.
Part of that's going to be due to the program expense for the mental health advocates, which the contributions that I just talked about will help out offset some of that. And there's a couple other line items that they're a little high on that I'm going to discuss with the judge, and I think we can get those back in line.
Okay, and the final on public defender, we're trending about $140,000 below prior year to date with essentially the same annual budget.
There again, we'll catch that up in November. We had one monthly, they invoice us monthly, and that invoice got put into, the invoice for October got put into November.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cersei. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any more questions? Okay, next I'll call on Public Works Director Charles Pope to present a request to transfer funds for the purpose of purchasing a motor for the Caterpillar 140H.
Thank you, Chairman. What we're requesting to get $19,800 transferred out of our Splosh gravel account to our Splosh equipment purchase account to purchase an engine for a 140H motor grader, which went out, had about 8,500 hours on it, and this will be a replacement for it.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Charles?
Mr. Pope, does this engine have a warranty?
It does. It has a 1-year unlimited hour warranty. If we wanted to purchase a extended warranty, we would have to wait till the engine got installed in the equipment, and they would come out and look at it and evaluate the whole drivetrain, and then they would give us a price at that time for extended warranty.
Okay, so if we approve this evening, that's something you could do on your own. If you felt like that was a value, you could always bring that back to us for consideration. You know, some of these extended warranties don't make sense and others do. I mean, it just
Right.
depends on the value at the time and the analysis. One of the concerns I have, everything continues to be so computer driven. You can have a quality product and, you know, one computer component bad in something, and you've messed up, or you've got a really big expenditure there.
Yes.
So I would just ask that be something, if you wouldn't mind looking at, just to see what that would come in at.
Yes, we sure will.
Thank you.
I got one quick question. Is 8,500 hours about a typical amount you'd expect from an engine like that, Charlie?
Actually, that's a little better than usual. We do maintain them, do preventative maintenance on them, so that actually it lasted a little longer than normal.
Okay.
Okay, hearing no more discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
Motion.
Is that a motion to approve?
To approve.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Approved 6-0.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to leave you up here, Charles, and have you go over the Heath and Lineback Inspection Services contract on the Tyus Carrollton Road Bridge project, please.
Due to the length of this project, we originally signed the contract in March of 2010. So it's almost 10 years, and we've redesigned the road a couple of times, and they actually redesigned the bridge because the beams was going to be 6 foot tall at one time. Now they're 24 inches, so I lowered the road 4 foot. So due to the length of the project, we need to approve the $32,000 to continue the inspection service.
Does anybody have any questions?
And as I understand it, that was the amount originally proposed, 32,000, right?
No, the original amount was $77,000, one we signed back in 2010. This
Okay.
is just an extension on that contract.
Okay.
I think this is essentially to ratify, in addition to the interim chairman's, at the time, his funding capability when we didn't have a quorum. So this is a way to ratify the full agreement amount without having a stipulation.
He
Yes.
said at that time that he didn't have to have it in, and I was comfortable with that until we had a full operating board.
Yeah.
Okay, hearing no further discussion, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Okay, Okay, great. All right, all those in favor? All those opposed?
Thank you, Chairman,
Thanks,
Board.
Charles.
Approved 6-0.
Thank you. All right, we're now going to move into the business section, but I'm going to move things around a little bit. 9.2, abandoning a portion of Hutchinson Ferry Road. Stacy Blattman, the county attorney.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. This is a proposal to begin the process to consider abandoning a portion of Hutchinson Ferry Road. This right-of-way deed was given in 2011 by the timber company, and it was determined that the road improvements they were hoping to be made on this strip were not economically feasible. So at this time, they've asked us to consider abandoning the strip of road. So we'll begin the process, if you approve it, to put it in the legal ad and notify the appropriate parties.
Do we have any questions for Stacy?
I have a question.
Okay.
I noticed in the resolution, in the fourth paragraph, it says the county staff recommends approval of such request, provided that Blenheim Timber LLC conveys a 60-foot right-of-way deed for the portion of the existing road on their property. Has that been conveyed?
That it would be done simultaneously, but they're agreeable to doing that.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no further questions, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, good. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Approved 6-0.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're now going to go to 9.3, the sanitary sewer system. I call on Community Development Director Ben Skipper to present the 9.3, the resolution to amend the Carroll County Code of Ordinances.
Sure. Chairman and District Commissioners, Jake with Environmental Health has been working with the local Public Health Department to regulate off-site sewer systems, but their authority goes up to 10,000 gallons. So that's what local control is. This is above 10,000 gallons, goes directly to EPD. So a project of that size, of a 10,000 gallon system or larger, would bypass the Carroll County Board of Commissioners and the local environmental health department and go straight to the state. So what this does is basically close the loophole to where all control still goes through the Carroll County Board of Commissioners first for a look at it, and then would go on to the state.
So are there any questions for Ben?
Well, that's quick, thanks.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion made.
Okay.
Second.
Great, thank you. I have a first and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Approved 6-0. Okay, great, thank you. Stacy, I'm calling you again, 9.4 OFS Vitel, the LLC memorandum.
Thank you. This is a proposal for a memorandum of understanding for OFS Vitel. They're expanding at 10 Brightway Boulevard, and the company has agreed to create or retain 137 full-time jobs and make a capital investment of $50,150,000. This is for their 126,000 square foot expansion. We have the standard incentives for the tax abatement, which is over 10 years, with 10% increments each year, and the standard clawbacks and annual reporting requirements. And they'll continue to pay 100% of the school taxes and 100% of the taxes on their existing property. And we also have Daniel Jackson with Carroll tomorrow here if you have any questions for him.
Ms. Blackman, I spoke with you about a couple of questions that I had. One of those being that obviously there's some parameters in there and some checkpoints, if you will, where the payroll authority or whoever the governing authority at the time has the capability to make sure that the company is adhering within a percentage range to the standards to agree to this abatement, making sure that they're making the capital investments that they've agreed to, and also checking to make sure they're providing the employment that the figures that they're providing here. Is that correct?
That's correct. Those safety measures are in this MOU. We have annual reporting requirements, and if necessary, the authority has inspection rights.
Okay. And just one final point, essentially through the state, and you can correct me if I'm not wording this exactly correct, but essentially the development authorities or the Board of Tax Assessors are the ones with the actual authority, if you will, to apply the abatement, but it's been customary through our community that this board would give its blessing just to make sure that those authorities understand that we're supportive of it, but just so the public understands we're not necessarily the final vote in that decision. Is that correct as well?
That's right. The Development Authority property is tax exempt, so it has been the consensus of our practice in our community to have the county and the applicable city that's involved approve the abatement to make sure everyone's on board and there's consensus.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple comments, if I can say. This is one thing that I've talked with some folks in my district, and I know we have to strike a balance, and I know there's positive means to expansion and the additional jobs and so on, but one thing that kind of strikes me is the inequity, I guess, of such a tax advantage, in that if, let's just pick some small business in my district, if the Georgia Deer Farm wanted to expand by 200 square feet and add 3 jobs, I wonder if we'd give them a tax abatement. It just kind of, I understand this is a big deal, but for the sake of equity, it just somewhat rubs me the wrong way, in that we can do this for big business, but we can't have a similar commensurate, proportionate tax abatement for small businesses throughout the county to get the same deal. And that's one of my comments. The other is that I read through this in quite some detail, and I see that, yes, there's 137 aggregate created and retained jobs. Sometimes I fear what happens, though, is that the entire operation of a company, being a large company or a national company, cannot always be audited, or we can't keep our hands in everything they're doing, and rightly so. But could it be that there's a possible 137 jobs created in one venue, but 80 jobs or some other proportion of jobs that might be layoffs or something else, somewhere else in that company, so that the net effect is not 137 new jobs, although that's what's in the document. Though that's another one of my concerns. So the inequitability when it comes to the small businesses throughout our community, and then the fact that are we really netting 137 jobs over that period?
On the first issue, unfortunately, the economics of a transaction, we have to involve bond lawyers, and so that they have to look at, are the savings enough for the company to pay the expense of the transaction, because the bonds are actually issued. So that's unfortunately one of the reasons why it's the larger numbers that are involved to make it justified for the company to request the incentive. And then, let's see, your second question was about whether or not they're real jobs. And I think on our schedule, one of the schedules that has the protection that it has to be new or retained jobs in Carroll County. So they can't have one, if they have one facility in Carroll County, they can't move it from that one facility to the other one to get credit for it. So for Carroll County, I think we put the safety measures in to the extent we could. Now, we can't control what they do outside our jurisdiction, if that's the concern.
Yeah, it just seems like that's a bit hard to monitor. So,
Yeah.
and I don't like government in the hands of business, and I'm not saying we should monitor it, but it just seems like that's a bit difficult to accurately monitor, so.
Okay.
That's all.
Any other questions for Stacy or Daniel? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion made.
Second.
Okay, that's a motion made in favor.
In favor.
Oh, thank you. All right. All is in favor? Any opposed?
I'll do the opposed.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move back to 9.1, which is now going to be our last item under the business session. It's an update on the needs analysis of the County Administration Building on College Street. Because we'll be asking the public to support a continuation of the current SPLOS, I feel that it's extremely important to make sure we do our due diligence in evaluating the 2013 SPLOS projects. I will be bringing you further reviews and/or assessments on this item as well as other SPLOS projects. In October, I retained the services of Robbie Blattman of Aurora Advisory Services to conduct a needs analysis of the County Administration Building by interviewing the elected officials and department heads whose offices are located in the building, performing a general physical overview of the building, and then providing a summarized report based on the review. As I said initially, this is strictly a needs analysis, not a recommendation. At this point is the first step in evaluating number 12 on the 2013 SPLOS ballot, which read, acquiring, constructing, and equipping a county administration's building and parking lot associated therewithin. There will be no action taken on this item this evening. I'm now going to turn it over to Robbie for his report.
First off, my apologies. I'm running a bit late. I love to blame it on my finger where I cut it and pushed it back, but it's not 100% true that didn't catch it. I'm going to, if you don't mind, pass a few of those.
Thank you.
I'm passing out just an update, a single pager. First off, I'd like to say thank you to the department heads. They were outstanding. They allowed me tons of access. Some of the meetings / tours lasted about 3 hours. Poor Greg, he had to put up with me twice because I wasn't quite smart enough to keep up with all the stuff going on with elections. So first off, I want to say thank you to them. They were very gracious with their time. And as a county citizen, I also want to say it was great to see them active and a lot of pride in their work and well-deserved. It was good. So first off, say thank you. What you have in front of you, again, I think I just put 5 points on this that were observations made. The first and the largest was the space considerations for elections, the new voting law requiring paper voting records requires a lot more equipment, and that equipment has to be stored, and we don't have enough storage space. So short term, Chairman wisely moved out circles, and that bought us a little bit of time, but that's going to be a painful storage area, to say the least. It's on the second floor, and the elections is on the first floor, and you have to actually test that equipment periodically, much less you had 6 different elections going on during the time. So you actually would have to take those and disperse them out to the 28 different precincts. So anyway, challenging a location there. So that's one. It's well short of what we need, ballpark 3 times the amount of space that we currently have and are using. The second one on the list is just the layout is a bit challenging for operational functionality. It's a school. It's a school. It was designed in '48 and has long hallways. One of them's 150 foot long, the other's about 280 foot long. And those hallways serve as both walkways, obviously, but also as lobbies. It's not ideal, to say the least. The map room is used by a lot of folks, but only in close vicinity to a very few. It would be ideal, again, if those were better placed, with a little more holistic look at how that's designed and where those are located. And the offices themselves are parsed, if you will, on both sides of the hallway. They have to be. And that limits you on how those layouts are. And to the department head's credit, they recognize those shortcomings, and I'm simply reporting on them. And a few of the other, I guess along those same lines, I believe I actually listed it last in that little note, and it was concerning the unique workability of the different groups. Specifically, the tax assessors work closely with the tax commissioners group. Well, that makes sense, and vice versa, as well as the community development group with the tax assessor, public health, ditto, and there was a good bit of overlap in needs, speaking with each other, and the public seeing them one after the other. So though they're relatively close, 2 different buildings in some cases, some ways just down the hall, again, it's not ideal the way it's currently set up. But elections doesn't really have a lot of interaction with any of those groups. So, down the road, whatever decisions you make, they actually, it doesn't benefit them to be with or without a group. Not to say they shouldn't be, not to say they should, just it's not going to hurt you anyway if they're not, from that perspective. And you can see a couple of the other points there. Obviously, if you've ever been to the zoning and planning meeting room there, it's not up to date, and that's something that could certainly be improved, whether you stay there or not, whether we choose to. Are there any questions? I realize you just got a brief update, so I don't expect you to have read through all of that.
Mr. Blackman, I've got a question. So I know the chairman stated that your job here, I guess, is not to essentially provide a recommendation, but assuming that at some point in time this would move forward with an admin building and whatever perspective, can you explain to me, I guess, how your work would be instrumental in the development or design of the building, or if there's more packets of information that once you conclude that you would be able to provide, that either an architect or a building planner, I guess I'm trying to take what little bit you're doing at this moment and how it would end for us to take that and mesh that with another institution or another professional services or whatever that may be.
It's a good question. The way I would hope it would be utilized, because there's a good bit of work amongst the different groups, and and in our final report that we placed that does just what you've asked, it says, geez, this map room should be surrounded by X. Now, the actual details of it, you're right, would need professional help to help design that. But there is a good takeaway from that, because if you build, we do whatever we choose, but you could choose to build 5 different entities, right? Well, I'm arguing based on what I've seen and heard from the department heads, that that's probably not wise, that they actually should be very close in proximity, all minus the elections group. So that would be important from where my perspective is. Somebody might see it differently, but that would certainly, I hope, guide some of the work that was done. So yes, I would hope so. Certainly hope so.
So to summarize what you're saying that as this concludes, you would have, I guess what I'm saying, more tangible information for us to have.
Absolutely.
Here again, I've
and as well as the square footage of the storage, obviously, which is actually fairly well spelled out.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
But, and that storage piece is unique, because you could store it like a sardine, but then every month you have to go out and test it. So it's not really wise to do that. You're adding a lot of labor. So it'd be nice if you stored and testing and you didn't have to move the equipment. Well, that takes more space, and that's why you see 3 different exhibits there as far as how much room it takes to store. And there's a lot to store, y'all. There's 316 of now 3 different things. Prior, you only had the one piece, but now you have the printer, you have the scanners, you have the uninterruptible power sources. There's a lot to store.
We saw this equipment up at the Athens conference, and it is a lot of equipment. I mean, if we were hard up against money or wanted to be real frugal, I guess we could buy insulated storage trailers and build them in. I mean, if storage is just simply the question here.
Yeah, if it was just storage, it would, but you actually got to move it, to 28 different locations. So
right.
It's going to be a challenge wherever we do it.
Well, and Homeland Security has some specific rules that go with that. Mm-hmm. We've already kind of done some of that exploration, but Homeland Security has dictated security, climate controlled, so it can't just put it in a storage. Has to be, supervisor has to be on site.
I think one of the big questions for me about this moving forward is somewhat of a recommendation in how everybody's placement works. So you take Public Works, for instance. They've got a fairly new facility, and there's a lot of machinery and things that make sense that it probably doesn't need to be relocated. But does it make sense for the commission chairman and the commission office and, HR and finance? Does it make sense to them to commingle in a building with the elections office and the tag office? And so that, to me, is more of an end goal of what I'm trying to figure out based off what I'm assuming that a part of what you're doing here is, what is the magic formula for this so-called county admin building? Is it one building? Is it 2 functional buildings? Is it 1 building with 4 support buildings? In other words, how do we really define that? And I think that's the bigger question for me, and I can only speak for myself. And if you understand where I'm going, we're all scattered out in so many different areas.
I think, Robbie, I'll take that question. This is only the first step in actually just looking at that facility, that building, and the needs of those people in that current building.
Okay.
Based on from tonight, any questions you want to send me, email me, or call me in the next few days, I can build another set to decide if we want to hire Robbie again or hire someone else, depending on what the needs are, to see where we want to go in the further steps of this. In the last 4 years that I was on the board, and I believe, like George, you can speak to this in Montreal, we never really had a direction going. From previous work that we gave to you, there was sort of a design, but not really an architect, just a rendering. So there's no information like this. So for me personally, I never could make a decision on buying land because I don't even know what amount of land we want, or do we want to stay where we are? Those questions like you have are so unanswered, and I'm attempting to get that going so that we do know at some point what we want to support when we go forward on this project or not go forward on this project. So I would really appreciate any further questions, and at that point, Robbie, I can talk to you about them. You can see if they fall under your abilities or recommend somebody else.
Sure.
did wonder along those lines of
Sure.
proper guidance if, I mean, these offices are not foreign to any county, so they're, 159 of them, I guess, are close to it throughout the state and other states as well. So are there any, or would your work include any industry standards, benchmarks, best practices in terms of square footage per staff, typical footage, square footage assigned to a tax commissioner's office for a county of this size, for the tax assessor's office with the number of parcels that this county has, that kind of thing. Any standards and benchmarks that we can go by rather than just say, hey, we need some kind of a building. I mean, there's got to be some benchmark, some meat out there that we can get comparable data.
That's a good question, and we actually talked about the potential of doing some benchmarking. Chose not to initially because we do think there's some benefit to that. I will say, though, that your department heads have done a pretty good job of, I specifically am pointing toward the technology opportunities to improve how we do business. Ben gave quite a few recommendations, and others did as well, of how we could make things better for the public interaction, and a lot of that was taken, and Ms. Hyde did too, was taken from other counties and said, hey, they do this better than we do, we need to. So I certainly know where you're going, and I think it's a great idea, and I think ultimately going to have to do that on size, but I would also encourage us to look at all the way those functionalities are tied together, especially from the IT standpoint as well, because there's certainly some opportunities there.
And with increased IT capabilities, possibly that reduces square footage
Absolutely.
requirements. So.
Absolutely. It's good.
Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you, Robbie.
Thank you.
Okay, before moving into the zoning session, I'd like to read the policies and the procedures governing the conduct of zoning hearings. The applicant or anyone speaking in favor of the application request shall be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present their request. Anyone opposed to the request shall also have a total of 10 minutes to present their opposition. If there are multiple speakers for or against an application, please ask them to be mindful to allow others to speak should they wish to do so. Anyone speaking for or against the application shall then be allowed a total of 5 minutes to speak in rebuttal. I'm now going to call on the county planner, Janet Hyde, for our zoning.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Good evening. The first item that I have for you all tonight is application C-19-11-01. This is the conditional use for a secondary detached dwelling at 154 Redland Bend Road in Temple. This is parcel 126-0106, land lot 85 of the 6th District, Commission District 3. Ms. Keeter, the applicant, is asking for permission to build a second residence on her property for her mother. She wants to build a handicap-accessible residence. The ordinance does require that you all have to approve a conditional use for a second dwelling on a parcel of land. The applicant is present. Staff did recommend approval of this, and Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Would the applicant like to speak or say anything? Come forward, please.
I didn't know if I'd have to or not, but I appreciate y'all taking this into consideration. I purchased this property with my late husband 20 years ago, the 27 acres, and built a home there, not taking into consideration that one day I may be taking care of an elderly parent. And my father, who passed away 3 years ago, I entrusted me with her care. And my home is not handicap accessible. She is 72. The only living quarters that she has is up and down a flight of steps, and it's not going to be appropriate for her to use for very much longer. So I'm asking at the county, please consider that my mother needs this living space for her well-being.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, I'll ask again a second time. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Janet or our applicant?
Ms. Hyde, assuming that if the board did decide to approve this evening, this would be conditional only applying to the current owner, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Do I hear a motion or a second?
I'll make a motion to approve as
Second.
presented.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Approved 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go to 10.2.
This is item C-19-1102, conditional use for a cell phone tower at 2187 North Highway 16, Whitesburg. This is Commission District 5. This is parcel 179-0009, land lot 64, the 5th District. The applicants are Robert and Patricia Curbo. The owner is Robert and Patricia Curbo. The applicant is Verizon Wireless. We did receive several calls in support of this cell phone tower. I did get one email today in opposition of the tower. It was from Ms. Carroll and Dodd, who owns property at 341 Kiva Ridge Drive. And I'll give this to the clerk so she's got this for the file. But that was the only opposition that staff heard from this application. Staff did recommend approval of this application, and Planning Commission also recommended approval. And Verizon Wireless is present.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Board. It's nice to see you again. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you, and happy holidays. As you heard from me last, I guess the last time we met, Verizon is trying to enhance the coverage in Carroll County, all across the county. And this particular tower is going to be, as Janet spoke, it's going to be up in Whitesburg, Georgia. It's sort of at the intersection of Guthrie Road and Alternate 27. Their property is 48.7 acres. It's much larger than the other property that I brought to you before. And we have contacted the Curbos because of that very reason, because we feel like if we can place this tower in their existing trees that they have, that it'll be less intrusive from everyone in that area. Janet has given you, I believe, and provided for you some coverage maps showing you the pretty colored maps, showing you the coverage that we can currently have and the need and what will happen with the enhancement of the 225-foot tower that we're proposing to place on the property. Just so that you know the areas that we're trying to improve out here, we're trying to improve the additional car in-building and street capacity coverage along Highway 27, Noonan Road, alternate 27, I should be clear, Noonan Road, Banning Road, Little New York Road, and Stillwater's Plantation. I could walk you through with the maps and everything if you'd like. I think you've also been supplied a copy of the site plans, but this will be your typical compound 100 by 100 area, which will be large enough, and the tower will be built to accommodate at least 4 other cell carriers that come into the area. There is a need for a tower in that area. The closest towers close to us are 3 miles away and 6 miles away, so there is definitely a hole in the coverage here, and we're just trying to provide better coverage. We have a lot of drop calls. We've had complaints from the police department along 27, as well as a lot of the homeowners in the area are glad to see coverage coming. So this time I would just ask if you could just review that and hopefully approve our application for our tower.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Okay, please come forward. If you'll please state your name and address for us.
My name is Sandy Chambers, and I live at 308 Kiva Ridge Drive, which is at the back of Stillwater's Plantation. And we built our house 2.5 years ago, and most of the time we have to step outside to make a phone call. My mom lives in Mississippi, and I usually get on my back porch to talk with her, and it's very inconvenient. So I feel like we definitely need it, and I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Okay, at this time I'll move over to, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? I'll ask a second time, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Okay, seeing none. Do we have any questions for staff or the applicant?
I'd like to know the gist of the opposition letter, because I've gotten calls all in favor, and I haven't received anyone opposed to it. So I just wondered if, just the general gist of the... Okay, thank you.
It says, I'm writing you today with great concern for the proposed cell tower in the Kiva Ridge area. I am opposed to the placement and feel another area not so close to a residential neighborhood on a lake should be selected. The estate to which myself and my sister are beneficiaries own the 3 acres located at 341 Kiva Ridge Drive. We are greatly concerned for the property values in the area should the tower be placed there. We feel the investment made will be lost. Another concern is the overall aesthetics to the area. To find affordable lake property in a quiet area is tough to do. Kiva Ridge offers that, and to place an unsightly tower to view while on the lake just does not make sense. Shouldn't we protect the beauty of the area? There is plenty of land in the area that has not been developed that could sustain the tower. I ask that you don't do this to an established neighborhood and jeopardize the financial well-being of your voters and tax-paying citizens. I ask that you vote against the placement of this tower in the Kiva Ridge area. Thank you for reading my opinion and taking it into consideration in making this decision. Thank you, Carroll Dodd.
Any further questions for staff or the applicant?
Ms. Hyde, in comparison to the last cell tower that we approved, this one is 235 feet. So I'm assuming the additional height, the fact that it's located in an agricultural area, obviously this would fit more the needs of where this placement is going. Is that correct?
That's correct. We do allow for additional height in agricultural zoning.
Okay. So there's no concern from your office about the additional height or how they're projecting to build the tower?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
I noticed it's going into 49.7 acres. It's
Mhm.
going to be in, where is it going to be, near the center of that property or near the edge of the
It's
property?
toward the back right-hand corner of the property, but it's closer to the center.
Closer to the subdivision
You
lots.
should have a site plan in your packet.
So it's going to be closer to the subdivision lots?
A little closer.
Okay.
And I believe that's due to the topography of the site.
Okay, no further discussion or questions. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, great, thank you. All right, we have 10.4, a rezoning on Central High Road.
This is item Z-19-1102. This is a rezoning from commercial to industrial for a mechanic shop. The applicant is JTI Properties. This is 369 Central High Road, parcel 111-0076. This is in Commission District 4. This is the old property that was owned by Hollingsworth Concrete. JTI Properties purchased the property and had been grandfathered in as far as the use, but when they came in to get a building permit, we realized that they could not expand on that use being grandfathered. So they had to apply for the rezoning. And Planning Commission recommended approval, and staff also recommended approval. And the applicant is present.
Okay, the applicant would like to come forward.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Moore. I'm with Jones Transportation. JTI Properties is a real estate holding company that's owned by Jones. Our main customer is Southwire. We have roughly 70 employees that work in Carrollton, in between Carrollton and Villa Rica. In 2017, Southwire requested that we begin to park our equipment off-site when it's not in use, and also to do mechanical work off-site. So we purchased the property in 2018 and began to park our equipment there and do light mechanical work. We're wanting to rezone the property so we can build a 9,000 square foot mechanic shop. This will allow us to hire 4 to 5 more mechanics, and it'll allow us to do more work in Carrollton rather than sending it out to our other shops in Cedartown and Atlanta.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the zoning? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition of the zoning? Okay, I'll ask a second time for opposition. Okay, at this time, Commissioners, do y'all have any questions for Janet or for the applicant?
Ms. Hyde, I see that the future land use is conclusive of industrial, so that fits our map that we have approved previously. Yes. Thank you.
What are going to be your, I'm sorry, what are your hours of operation going to be?
There will be between 7 and roughly 6. That's how we operate right now. It won't change.
7 in the morning till 6 at night?
Mechanically. Our trucks, they're 24 hours because Southwire is a 24-hour operation.
Oh, I understand that. But I mean, you're not going to be running air wrenches at
No.
midnight?
Our mechanics leave around 6 o'clock at night.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, item 10.5 is an amendment to the county zoning ordinance. So before I open the public hearing for any comments on the proposed amendment, I'll ask County Attorney Avery Jackson to review our proposed changes.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, Commissioners, we have before you a proposed resolution to make some changes and clarifications to the county's zoning ordinance. The county was involved in some litigation recently concerning the issues in this ordinance, and this ordinance is to clarify those issues going forward. Number one is the definition of a club. We wanted to expressly state that a club, including hunting and fishing clubs, does not include shooting ranges or gun ranges. So that is expressly stated through the resolution. Also, a definition of hunting club is provided, whereas previously the ordinance did not have a definition of hunting club. The next item that is being changed is the definition of the special events facility. The only thing that's being changed is that definition. In that definition is adding a sentence that the special events facility must have been an agricultural nature and can be converted back to that agricultural use or nature. Basically, the county doesn't want people going in ag, getting a special events conditional use permit and building a giant commercial facility in an agricultural zoning district. If they wanted to build that type of facility, they'd need to get it rezoned to commercial zoning. The next item is to specifically include shooting ranges as a conditional use in industrial zoning district. Previously, shooting ranges, skeet shooting ranges, indoor or outdoor, were not provided for in the zoning ordinance, and there was arguments that it fit under certain other definitions. And so staff and the attorneys felt like that it needed to be expressly provided for going forward, and that is commercial skeet shooting ranges, commercial indoor, outdoor shooting ranges, and if somebody would apply for that, they'd have to come before the Board of Commissioners, ask for a conditional use permit for that. And again, that would only be a conditional use in the industrial zoning district. And there's a number of, I guess, items that they would have to comply with if they were going to do that, including insurance requirements and others.
Okay, at this time, I'll open the public hearing and I'll call for any comments. Any comments from the public at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to ask for questions from the board.
Mr. Jackson, I've got a couple of comments, and I know you and I had discussed some of this previously. I do want to make sure, I know that we have 1 million per incident, 2 million aggregate. I just want to make sure moving forward that staff always takes a hard look at the insurance. I know that that can change industry-wise periodically, so I just don't want us to assume something is a bare minimum standard, which it may be raised, because I deal with that on a weekly basis. I know a lot of different venues have a lot of different requirements. I'm satisfied with the 2 million aggregate, but I just want us to keep a check on that in the future.
That is a good idea. And as time goes on, those limits will need to be increased at some point in the future.
And one thing I did want to clarify in looking on page 2 of 5 with the clarification or the definition number 1, 2, and 3 of small special event facilities, intermediate, and large. And I had basically posed the question to you if there could actually be a large gathering on a 50-acre tract of property that maybe had 2,000 attendees, and you were basically, I believe, saying that we have something on the books as far as a mass gathering permit. So I just wanted to make sure that that's understood, that if that is something in a separate entity, this does not necessarily define any and everything, that we would only allow something at a 500 maximum occupancy, depending on the event.
Yep. A couple of items, and I'll let Ben Skipper address this too, but the definitions of small special events facility and the intermediate and large and the requirements of the number of guests and the acres, that is not being changed. That's already in the current zoning ordinance. The Board of Commissioners adopted the special events facility changes to the ordinance in 2017, so that part's not being changed. We're just changing that one sentence regarding the structures must be able to be converted back to agricultural structures if they're not being used as the special events facility. But those items were included at that time, and they're not being changed. The county also has a mass gathering ordinance, as you mentioned, that requires permits if you're going to hold an event that's going to have over 250 people at the event. And we're not talking about, this is outdoor events, and it does not include events at places where the structure allows for a maximum occupancy. So if there's a maximum occupancy of the structure or the location, like an athletic facility or a church or some other building or structure, then that would not fall under the mass gathering ordinance. But if you're having a large outdoor concert, like we do in the counties a number of times, people come and apply for the mass gathering ordinance for those outdoor concerts on their agricultural farms, and they can have a significant amount of people. There's a number of requirements that they have to comply with, and it has to go through the fire department, the sheriff's department, and of course Ben Skipper's department signs off on that.
Right, and Commissioner, I was just going to add to that the ordinance that we're here before today was to give opportunities to farmers with large tracts of land that have big, beautiful historic barns or old barns or really neat things, and it gives them an opportunity to have a wedding there as a secondary income to the farm. So that's what we was looking, that is our goal, is to provide the avenue for farmers to utilize their farms in, on the farm. But we needed to get there, like Avery was saying, we needed to specifically state those structures are barns. They're not the hotel, they're not the Holiday Inn, a full commercial building operating 7 days a week. So that's what we was looking to really to define is These are barns on farms that, they have wedding venues. Now, and then the other part is there's also other things along with outdoor concerts, outdoor rodeos, the fair that comes to town. All of these are things that come, and the mass gathering ordinance allows for those landowners to have that event. They typically can move around from location to location, but what it basically does is the mass gathering ordinance, it basically requires the promoter to get all the county agencies and cities talking on the same page, with a fire safety plan, a emergency management plan, get the ambulance service out there, the fire service, and even off-duty policemen. But yes, so that's kind of the difference between the two. A mass gathering ordinance deals with something as a concert. We have a little big jam once a year, or maybe twice a year, or you could have a rodeo, or you could have a fair come to a large parking lot. It provides that avenue for that one-time event, where the wedding venue is for it's for a structure that's fixed to the property and will reoccur. So that's kind of the main difference. What we see in community development, and that's a long-winded version of trying to explain of what we're trying to do is help these guys out in the county.
Thank you for the clarification.
While you're up there, man, and Avery too.
Sure.
Sorry to delay this, but just to be sure, from what I've heard, I would not think there would be an adverse effect, but Steve mentioned Little Vine Vineyards. I mean, that particular has a...
Well, Little Vine Vineyards is actually under another ordinance. They're under, we created a winery ordinance specifically to allow them to operate their wineries, and we followed the state model ordinance on those. So Little Vine Vineyard is followed under the farm winery program. You see their state signs. We're participating in the Georgia Department of Agriculture for the winery.
Yeah, and also in my district is some venues for weddings and that kind of thing, and I know you've stated that specifically, but like Todd Wright sold his farm to another couple that's now doing that, and
exactly
the barn out in the countryside.
That's exactly prime example.
It would not adversely affect.
No, it doesn't affect those at all. No.
Okay, just wanted to be sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed ordinance changes for clubs, special event facilities, and shooting ranges. That includes the addendums that Mr. Jackson included in the paperwork we have before us.
Second.
Great. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, great, thank you. Before we adjourn to executive session for the purpose of discussing pending and potential litigation, I want to let you know there's a possibility that some action may be taken when we return. Do I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Motion made.
Second? Okay, great. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, at this time we will leave.
For the benefit of those watching and streaming live at home, we will be stopping this broadcast and will resume the broadcast if any action is to be taken.